Hi everyone, hope you're doing okay. I'm going to do this video on showing you a few more techniques of using watercolours. So I'm going to move my camera so you can see what I'm doing, so bear with me a sec. Okay, so for now you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to use some watercolours. So if you've got tins like this, absolutely fine. I've just added a little few things, just try and cover a few bases here. So I've got my watercolour sets. I've also got here some brush-o that I've mixed up. Now I know some of you have got that, and this is what brush-o is. It's that way. Brush-o is just a powder. They used to use it a lot in textiles, but now we can use it in on paper stuff as well. So I've just mixed some powder with some water. The reason I'm doing that is when I'm working away, I like to have volume when I'm doing watercolours. That's absolutely fine if you want to, which just adds a little bit. I also like to use sort of like some acrylics here, because this set doesn't have a purple, so I can mix myself some acrylics here and use them a little bit like watercolours as well. So if you have no watercolours, just mix yourself up like that, a nice puddle, and you can work it in the same way. Yeah, you can add to it, and it gives you a bit more volume to work with. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to show you a few techniques I can do. So I've got my water, got my brushes, got the brushes that have the longer bristles, they're better, and I've got some of my brush pens and my tea towel to wipe my brushes off. Always good to have just at the side there. So, and I've got my watercolour paper. So this is the image that I'm going to be using. Again, I've just done a tracing so I can transfer it onto a few different backgrounds, and then I can use it. So this is about practicing the techniques. Okay, and one of the first techniques that I find really useful if you're doing watercolours is if you've got some of these pens, or any kind of pens that you've got, just give them a go. If they're not permanent, what they should do is they should be able to run. So I've done an outline here, a transfer. So I'm just going to get my glasses on, and I'm going to get this pen, and I'm just going to sort of like do a few marks on it. Quite random. Because sometimes when we're using watercolours, what can be a little bit tricky is to use enough water with them. So this is a nice way, and it's a good effect as well. So if you haven't got any watercolours or anything, but you've got some pens, just give them a try. See what they do, because that's a fine one. And so I'm just going to then put the heavier one in, just to make it a little bit darker in places. Then all you need to do that is add some water, and that pen will run. So it gives you a really nice tonal effect. So you don't want to put too much of that heavy pen on, because you want it to be so it doesn't get too heavy, and then it gets takes away some of the form. I've also got this kind of pen. I'm just going to put some of those thinner lines in. So I've got a different kind of weight of line as well. I can go over the top of that after as well if I want to. Quite like that, do a bit more there. And then again, I'm just going to carry on with some of my water. So that pen might run, but it won't run because it's quite thin. It won't run as much, so you get a nice kind of, you still get that nice thin weight of line there as well. So it means you can be quite loose with it, me. I like to be a little bit loose. Moving the brush around. And then what you can do is you can come from the outside to put the background in. And again, what I like to do is just kind of touch the edges so it runs, especially where that thin pen is. So again, you get this nice kind of loose feel to it. Yeah, so it's a really nice effect, and that's just using pens. Any pens you've got, just give them a try and see if they run. If they don't run, you get this nice kind of line effect to it, just to add a little bit of colour to them. So that's nice because it gets you started again and just in the use of the water. So that's one, just another one I did practice there. The next thing I'm going to show you is about doing backgrounds. How we're going to do some different backgrounds in them, yeah? So when you're doing with watercolours, you can work in which way you like. You can do it like, let's see if that you can see on that one. You can draw your drawing out first and then paint it in, or you can do some backgrounds first, which I've done here, yep, and I'll show you how to do them, and then you can put your image on top afterwards as well, yeah. So there's a couple of different techniques we can do. Show you on this side. So watercolour is very simply, let's try a bit of that one. So you can water it down so it's nice and thin like watercolours. It's all water based, so you can mix it. So if I do that, that's wet onto dry. But what we're going to do is we're going to do wet into wet. So I'm going to wet the paper. Then I'm going to put some of these colours in there, so let's try that one. Bit of that orange mixed with it, there you go. And then I'm going to put it, just let it dab into here, yep. So it'll run wherever the water is, so that's why it's wet into wet. And you just want to put it on as strong as you like initially, because you've already got water on the paper, so it'll make it run. Now if I do it, so that's wet into wet, yeah. So if I do it and I find that I've put too much paint on, then you can get your tissue, crunch it up, and then you can dab it off. Now if I just dab it off lightly like that, it gives me a nice texture as well, yeah. So that's a nice way of doing a background. The other thing is, if I have put too much paint on, I can actually do it where I'm going to lift off the paint as well. So if you feel like you put too much on, you can do it that way and lift it off, yeah. So that's one, that's just wet into wet. Here's another one we can do as well. Is again, we're going to do a wet into wet. I'm going to show you two on this one, and I'll show you how it finishes off. So what I'm going to do is again, put some water on the background. Sometimes if you've got a little spray gun, they're quite good for this, but let's get your brush. So wet into wet first, let's get some colour. Get some of that nice blue going on. Let it run in. Brush off. Get some of this colour. So I'm just a bit stronger. I'm just going to dab it in. You need to work a little bit quick with it. Because what you want, there's two things you can do to this now. You can leave it like we have done before, the wet into wet. You can get some rock salt and you can just put some rock salt onto it. And what that rock salt will do is it will start to, you can't use table salt, it's too fine, use the rock salt. It will soak up. And then the other thing you can do is get some like cling film, just put it on like that, crunch it up, and then with both of those things what you've got to do is let it dry. And then here's one I've done before. This is the salt one. Once the salt's dry, it should all brush off and it'll leave you this really nice mottled effect, yeah. That's what the rock salt will do. So again, you have to leave it to dry. The cling film, here's one as well. So that's the cling film. Again, you have to leave it to dry, otherwise it'll just take all the paint off. And then it leaves you with this lovely marks in there as well, where all the creases of the cling film. That's another one with a bit of salt on as well. all the cling films formed all those lovely lines, yeah? So you can do those backgrounds. And so when you've got those backgrounds, like the salt one, then you can work on top. Like what I've done here is I've got my drawing, I've drawn round it. Don't do it that way now. I drew around it in the pencil so it's on the surface now, and then I've just been painting it in, and I've painted it in. I'll stick that down a little bit, just using like our wet into wet again a little bit. But like I've said before, when you're using watercolours, the more water the lighter the colour, so the less water the stronger the colour, yeah. And then I've just been painting in these petals, and you can kind of just paint them in, or you can start using your brush a little bit, like move it a bit like on the flat, twist it around so you get these nice kind of curves. And because the underneath is colour is dry, I can just work on top of them and start adding a little bit more of that. Different tones, different shadings to it. Yep, try some of this dark purple mixed in, just to add some more dark here. So you can just do the wetting to dry on top of it, yeah. So you can do it when you're doing the watercolours. Again, this is how I work. You try either which way you want to do it. So you can either make a background, yeah, you can either make a background first, let it dry off, yep, make a background, let it dry off, do your transfer of your image across onto it, and then you can paint it in like I've done here, yeah. Done a little bit on that one as well, where I've just done a little, just a blue with just a little bit of the cling film, and then started painting on top. The other way is to do it where you then do your image on top, yep, and then you can start doing again, do your wet on to dry, just paint directly on top of, paint your image in directly on top of the paper, and then let it dry off a bit, and then you can maybe put a background up to it. Sometimes I don't mind doing it when it's wet and letting it kind of just flow into each other again like that, keep it nice and loose. Then once it's dried off a bit more, then I can go back in. Let's try some of that. Sit with that purple. Then I can go back in once it's dried off a bit and start to add to it a bit more and start to lift it out. But a good, nice mixture of wet into wet as well. So you can do your background and then you can keep building up on it. Yeah? So that's kind of the processes that you can take. You can make backgrounds, draw on top, paint it, and then just kind of do a wash so you can still see your pencil marks coming through. So you can do a wet into wet background, let it dry off, and then start painting on top of it like I've done there, yeah? But with watercolours, as I said before, you've just got to let it dry each time you do your layer onto it. And I like, let me pull that up, that kind of runny effect to it. Again, you know, keep letting it dry if you want to put more and more detail onto it as you go along. And the other thing I was going to show you is what we call a resist. Now you can use a couple of things to resist with. You can use what we call masking fluid or drawing gum, and you can use oil pastels as well. So this is one I've done with masking fluid here, or the drawing gum. And what you've got to do with that is you've got to paint it on, just see if I've got one up, and then what you've got to do is just got to paint it on, nothing, no water, just straight on with a brush, and just paint it on quite thick. Yep. Now what people tend to use this for is to keep the white of the paper, so if you want to put like highlights in, but what I've done on that one is I've painted the whole float in. I'll show you why in a sec. So that's what you've got to do with the masking fluid, just paint it on. Yep, again, like I said, keep it a bit just straight from the jar, and then you've got to leave that to dry before you do anything with it, and then you make sure you wash your brush pretty much straight after, because it's a latex and it will ruin your brush otherwise. So that's, I'm just going to let that dry, and then when it is dry like this one is, yep, what you can do with it, because it's nice and dry, I can get my brush and I can paint it in. Yep, so I can keep within the lines and just kind of use it to paint up against, like that. I'm just going to keep it really just that one colour initially, put it in, just to show you, you know, that the resist is. And then let's get some of this yellowy orange and come from the back as well, so I can paint up to that masking fluid. So it's acting as a little bit of a barrier between my background, yeah, and here on my image. So you can be a bit more kind of up to it. It's bled through there, I quite like that bit. So you can then leave that to, dry. What I'm going to do actually is just get some of that darker purple there, and while I've got that masking fluid on, I'm just going to play up against it with that purple. See if it flicked off there. So, and then I have to wait for that to dry. Then I've just done a little one here where I've started to take off the masking fluid. Can you see where the white is? So I've left a bit on there just to show you. You do that with it. Rub it until it starts to peel off. Let me put it flat so I can rub it. There you go. And then it'll start to peel off. Yep. So you're left with the white of the paper. So what I've done on this one, that's nice to do as well. So what I've done then is I've gone on top again. Oh, wash your brush properly there. Get some of that orange. I've just gone over the white with that orange yellow. So I've got this next nice little tone going on with the dark and light as well, and I've left some of that masking fluid on there, so I've still got the white of the paper as well in the middle. I'll show you there. So if I rub that, yeah, you've kept the white of the paper there, so you can build up layers doing it that way as well, using the I'll show you this one a bit closer, using like the masking fluid. So once that's dry, I can take it off and then I can work back into it like I've done with that one, yeah? Then the other resist one, go back to this now, yep, is you can use oil pastel. Now sometimes people use oil pastel, the white oil pastel, to keep the white of the paper, but I'm going to use colour one, and I'm going to just put in some of the flower. Now because this is an oil pastel, that's where the resist comes into it, yeah? Because in a minute I'll show you all. Just going to blend that down a little bit. And then what I can do, get myself some nice watered down watercolour, and I'm just going to paint over it like that just so you can see what happens in terms of the resist is that the water won't go where the oil pastel is. Yeah, so you can see that, like this one I've done a bit more here. That's the oil pastel, the purple and the orange, and then I've just painted it in using the watercolours. So again, just working with those layers. Yeah, so you can just see there how you can use it, like I say, as a resist really, you know, so you can put it in and use it that way as well. So I hope that was of some use. You might not have all those materials, but just try a few of them. Main thing is just see what you've got and use them with the technique. So wet into wet, a little bit of cling film, using the salt, yeah, using the sponge, we can do them. And if you've got the other stuff, you can use that as well. Okay, well, thanks very much, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.